Hi there, Tammy.
Hey, Nate. I was like, oh, where are you? Where is everyone?
It's all black.
I know. I'm going to try and do the show without my reading glasses today.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how it goes.
Do you have to make all the fonts really big?
Yeah, everything is, it's kind of blurry, but I can see it okay.
You ever see that where like you're an older person hands you their phone for help and all the fonts are like 28 point and they're like taking up the whole screen?
Yeah.
Because they want to be able to use it without having to wear their glasses.
Yep. Kind of like when you forget your glasses and you're at the grocery store and you're like, oh, what does that say? And you take a picture of it. And
I was going to say, you ever do that where you take your phone and either you zoom in the camera or you take a picture and zoom in?
Yep. Getting old sucks.
I have found a lot of cases where like, I don't have any examples right here in front of me, but if I'm working on some piece of electronics and I need to find a part number from it, they have started making part numbers on small electronics like super tiny, that I don't think anybody can read them, but maybe young people could read them. Now I sound like an old man or something, but I used to be able to read them and now I can't. I have to take a picture and zoom in on them.
Yep.
And Apple is the worst offender because they want everything to look so pristine that they'll take like a white part and then the part numbers will be written on it in very, very light gray because they don't want it. They don't want you to be able to see it, but it has to be there.
So this is the Off-Road Insiders podcast.
Yes, welcome.
Just in case you joined us and you're like, well, they're talking about electronic stuff. Did I tune into the right podcast?
Yeah, well, that's the hazards of this being my hobby instead of my day job.
So Nate and I we like to chit chat about whatever.
Yeah. Well, it is a podcast. It's our podcast. Dang it. We'll talk about what we want. And you
And
guys are all here for the ride.
Yes, exactly. So yes, this is the Off-Road Insiders podcast. And Nate and I are going to get to the main topic here in a minute. But first, how's that Superduty 60 going?
I'm still working on it. Everyone's going to think that I'm like the slowest worker ever, but listen.
When it's 159 degrees out, you're like, okay, I've done 5 minutes of work. I'm going back in the house.
Life is cool. Well, that and life is busy, right? We just spent 4 days at the Jersey Shore in Wildwood, just back from there.
Yep.
I have the Jeep Jamboree coming up this weekend, so I'll be gone Thursday through Saturday.
And where's the Jeep Jamboree?
For work a week or two before that. That's the one at AOAA.
Okay.
So yeah, it's if I could be home long enough and also not have things for family and whatnot going on, I could really buckle down and work on the thing. But yeah, the week that I started working on it, which is when I was like plasma cutting and stuff, which generates a lot of heat, was the week that it was like record highs here in Pennsylvania for the whole week. So I would get like an hour of work in and then I'd be just too hot and I had to stop. Plus like all the stuff I wear to keep myself from getting hit with sparks and fire and whatnot.
Oh, you're probably sweating inside
so
all that.
It's like you're melting. Even on a moderate day, you're hot because you have all that extra gear on. And on that day, it was just ridiculous hot. So yeah, I've been getting like an hour here, an hour there. And I have most of the brackets gone at this point. I'm working on the driver's side of the axle. There's some bracketry that's really close. That's hard to get like grinders and stuff in. So I'm really working on how to get that out of there without doing any damage to the housing. So that's kind of where I'm at this point. Once those are off, it's ready to just kind of be cleaned up and then I can put the truss on it. So it's pretty close to ready for that. So yeah, the next thing then is like, what am I doing for a locker? I'm thinking about an ox locker. I don't know if you have any experience through the shop, if you got any stories about an ox locker that I should stay away from them.
I haven't heard any. I'm trying to think. I think we do ARB.
ARB is the most common.
Yeah.
And that was what I originally thought I would do because I figure if the entire off-road industry has settled on ARB, there's probably a good reason for it.
Right.
But I like the simplicity of ox because it's a manual driven locker. Like you don't have to have electricity. You don't have to have air. You can actuate it with a cable. But I've heard that the cable is sometimes the problem. The cable's like seize up, sort of like a bike cable, like the cable for your handbrake on your bike. they can sometimes get like corroded and they seize up. But they make an air or electric actuator that you can put on the axle, which will do the work. And if it fails, you can literally just put a bolt through the thing and it'll lock it.
Huh.
So that's kind of, and they're super strong from what I understand. So I don't know if anybody has any opinions about the Ox Locker. I'd love to hear it. I haven't bought one yet. They are, I think, actually more expensive than the ARB.
Oh, really?
But I like the fact that I don't have to worry about leaky airlines. Like in a case where I just need the damn thing to lock, I can literally put a bolt through the thing and lock it in. Like I think that's a pretty cool feature. But yeah, again, haven't decided yet, but kind of leaning that way. I think it was Flawed Off-Road. I was talking to Dan. Dan, is that his name? Yeah. And he had just recently put an Ox Locker in his Dana 60. And I was asking him about it. And those are the reasons he said he did it. So
Learn
I'm
something new
curious.
every day. Yeah.
But yeah.
So speaking of axle housings, when we did my engine swap replacement or whatever you want to call it, Daniel's like, oh yeah, your axle shaft seals are leaking. I'm like, yeah. Anyway, I was gonna replace them, and Bob at the shops, he's like, don't even bother, because in 6 weeks they're gonna start leaking again because I have that, whatever you call it,
the truss,
the Jeep Smile.
Oh
Yeah.
So your front axle is already out of true, I guess. It's bent.
So I will be looking. I don't know if he suggested the Curry axle housing. But I just got to find it, and then you got to save money and blah blah blah. So I just am going to be checking my differential.
I think
to make sure there's enough fluid.
Unless I'm wrong, and I could be wrong, and our viewers will call me out. Sometimes we get people commenting about stuff when I go off the reservation and I'm wrong. But anyway, I believe the Curry is based on a 9-inch housing, a Ford 9 housing. And
I haven't even looked into it yet, so I'm not sure.
Unless they have different models, but I think they have one where it's like a Curry 9-inch with a high pinion or something. And I have a friend who tried to talk me out of the 60s and into 9s because of the way that the gears are set up inside. There's if I remember correctly, the pinion gear and the pinion itself has 2 bearings on it, one at either end of it instead of just one at the upper end, and that helps with shear force. Right, there's a lot less force on that pinion gear because it has support, like bracing at both ends. And let's see, videos is in chat. Currys are nicer except for the axle. Parking brake doesn't self-adjust. Okay. Videos, tell us if the Curry is based on a Ford 9, because I think it is. Anyway, but yeah, they are a good housing.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you should get a 9, and you should take the 60 outers and put it on the 9, and then you'll have a 609. And I'm like, dude, first axle swap. Don't.
Right.
I can't do that yet. Let me get through one.
One thing at a time. Let's just do the basics, and then I'll get fancy maybe later.
But the way it's built allows them to have smaller internals, which means the pumpkin itself is smaller, which gives you better clearance, is what it comes down to. And I think that's the way Curry builds them. Unless I'm way off and I'm thinking of some complete other manufacturer. But yeah, I mean, for the price, because there's a price.
Yeah. So obviously
you can't go wrong.
This is not going to be happening anytime soon. I'm still paying off my engine.
Yeah.
Even though that was at a reasonable discounted rate because I got the employee discount, but yeah, so that's going to be a while. So I just have to keep checking my gear oil to make sure.
Other options, depending on what it is that you have envisioned for your Jeep in its next phase of life. You could get a Dana replacement 44 front end, have somebody put the truss on it right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And you might be fine. It might be cheaper. I don't know. I'd have to look at the price, but I know Dana, you can get a Dana crate axle. I want to say they're like between $1,500 and $2,000. Still not cheap, but cheaper than a built aftermarket axle.
Yeah.
But then you'd have to build it, right? So it's up to
Yeah. So we'll
6
see.
of one, half dozen of the other.
We'll see. Maybe I'll win the lottery and I'll just
There you go. That's the way to do it.
start over.
I've been doing the 60 on basically between the little bit of money I get from YouTube and the little bit of money I get from Amazon affiliate stuff from the YouTube stuff. Comes a couple $100 a month, and I just let it build up. And when I'm ready to buy the next piece, I use that. You know, so it's been working out okay as long as that keeps going.
Yeah,
keep watching my stuff. Keep buying stuff through my Amazon affiliate links.
my YouTube actually, I've been watching my analytics, and since I started re-editing my videos, like cutting off that big long close at the end and shortening up the beginning and getting right to it, my numbers have jumped way up. It's
That's cool.
Yeah. So all those tips helped.
I've been trying to take that approach with anything new that I make. I don't know if I want to go back and re-edit all my old stuff.
I've been doing it since November.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. And plus I've been redoing my blog. But yeah, people have such short attention spans. You have to capture them within the first 3 seconds. Otherwise, they're scrolling on to the next thing.
Yeah. I still feel like there has to be some room in there for people who want to sit down with a cozy show, like an old school edited like a TV show style show. But you're right. I think the primary audience are like the short attention span people that just like flick through.
Yep. And if you can get them with those flicking throughs, they're like, oh, this guy's pretty interesting, or this person's pretty interesting. Maybe they'll go subscribe to you, and then they'll start watching.
Right.
I
feel like that's what short should be for, though.
It should be. But
it's terrible, right? It's like I almost look down on people like that, but then I find myself doing it. I'm like, I'm just as bad as them.
Yep.
Because I'm like watching a thing, and I'm like, I just want to know the thing. Can you please stop with the diatribe? And I'm like, oh my God, I do that. I do that in my videos. Why do I do that in my videos?
Yeah, I'm trying to like, hey, I'm Jeep Mama, and here's how you do this doohickey thing and get right to it. You don't need to know that your grandma had one and she used to make macaroni and cheese and blah, 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 blah.
Well, it's like Dirt Lifestyle said when he was on the show. And this summarizes it perfectly for me. And I actually use this at work, which we do like tech stuff, but they understood the concept. If you're going to be welding in the video, start with welding. Right? So like if you're making a cake, start with a cake. If you're showing off some cool feature, start with the cool part. Right? Don't
bury the lead.
Don't ramble around.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we're rambling around. We should probably talk about off-roady stuff. Like we did. We talked about axles.
Yes, and now we're going to talk about the Overland Expo.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this isn't working.
Now you got to put the glasses on.
Yeah. So, the Overland Expo with this, it's 4 different ones throughout the country, and they're at different times. They have one on the West Coast, one in the Pacific Northwest, one in the Mountain West, which is in Colorado, and one on the East Coast, and that's usually in the Virginia area. But anyway, in case you're into overlanding, this is a pretty cool event. It's usually a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're having it at the ranch in Loveland, Colorado, which is down around Denver. August 23rd through the 25th. You have to buy tickets. They have exhibits. They also have really cool classes, so you can learn, different things about overlanding, like how to use your GPS, how to, camp cooking, anything to do with overlanding. They have all these classes. Anyway, that's happening the end of August, the 23rd through the 25th in Loveland, Colorado. And I think they're going to be heading next to October. They're going to be in Arlington, Virginia, the first weekend in October. And I think the other ones have already happened. Yeah, they had one in June in Oregon, and in Flagstaff, they had one in May. But this happens every year with the Overland Expo. It's a pretty cool event, so check it out.
That's cool. We should start doing expos. Put up our own booth for the podcast. What do you think?
We could go live from the expo and interview people. And
totally affordable to get more space at an expo like that.
Oh, yeah, that one's probably super expensive. I mean, they have like big time vendors at that one with the
Yeah.
serious overlanding equipment.
I work a lot of conferences and expos in the tech industry, and when like I'm not there to organize the thing, I just show up when they tell me to. But I've talked to some of the organizers, and the amount of money that it costs us just to go be there and get in front
Mhm.
of customers is like, oh my god,
Thousands of dollars.
so
Some of
much
them,
money.
yeah. Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
then some of them, it's like, okay, well, along with your booth space, you get a couple passes. If you want anybody else, they have to pay the full conference pass, or they'll give you like a 10% discount or something on a $2,000 ticket. I'm like,
Mhm.
my God. And they send 20 people. I'm like, can you just put that money into my paycheck instead of
Right,
spending all this money
exactly.
on sending people to the expo? But yeah, not cheap.
All right.
All right. So that was fun.
Lifts.
Overland. I keep thinking about getting to more off-road related expos because we should branch out more,
Mhm.
I've been to a couple of Jeep events now, and my family enjoys it, so I can actually use that as a
Right.
as a way to get out more.
Some of them are really kind of fun. The little cheap shows or whatever you want to call them. They
Well,
can be
Bantam
really
has
fun.
been fun
Yeah.
every year. While we
The
were in, I don't want to go back too far here because we were already rambling, but while we were in Wildwood, it happened that it was the same weekend as the Bronco invasion,
Oh,
which
did you
is
get ducked by a
well,
Bronco?
it's so they've always done a Jeep invasion, not always, for several years. They've done a Jeep invasion on the beach, right? And I think last year they started doing a Bronco invasion too. So the Jeep invasion had like 1,200 participants, right? Pretty big show. I actually ran into Kyle, Off Road
Oh,
Consulting,
okay. Yep.
while we were down there because he went to both events, so he was there for like the whole week. And I asked him about it because the Bronco event was tiny,
Oh,
tiny.
they're just
There was like
starting.
there was
So,
like 2 rows of vendors, and they had an obstacle course. And we happened to go to the beach on Saturday, and we could see the obstacle course from where we were. And I'm watching it every now and then as I look over, and all I'm seeing on the obstacle course is Jeeps.
oh,
Apparently, a
the
lot of
Jeeps
the
got him.
vendors, well, first of all, the people who run it, I guess, are the same people who organize the Jeep event. So they're
Uh-huh.
all Jeep people, and they're just trying to make a second event for Bronco people. So they don't necessarily own Broncos. So they're all there with their Jeeps. So they're in the obstacle course. And the vendors apparently were having trouble getting their hands on Broncos in time because the Bronco production, I guess, isn't as fast as they need it to be to like get the
Interesting.
Broncos they really want,
Right.
right? So, or at least that's what Kyle told me. Or no, Terry, the Jeep Life podcast guy. I was
Oh,
talking to
yeah.
him too. He was there, but he was saying that Oracle LED, was it them? No, it was Kyle. He said he was going to get a Bronco for the event, and he couldn't. He couldn't get one ordered. So I
Huh.
don't know. The Ford dealership near my place has a bunch of them. They should just come here. Anyway, Bronco Invasion had a bunch of Jeeps at it. I thought it was funny. All
'Cause
right,
you
we have a
can't
main
really call it an invasion if there's that little.
Yeah, right. Right. We have a main topic. We should probably get to it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's about time. Yep.
So this
Talking about
particular topic,
laws.
this particular topic was spurred by a recent change here in Pennsylvania. Now, you've heard me lament the
Mhm.
ridiculous laws we have to abide by for things like off-road vehicles here in PA. Things like how wide your flares are allowed to be, and how high the vehicle's allowed to be, and all that stuff. And the one that bothers most Jeepers is the door law. You have to have doors on your vehicle. Now, people drive all over Pennsylvania with no doors, but it's nonetheless illegal, and you can be pulled over for it, whether you have mirrors on there or not. If I'm reading correctly, we are the only state where that's illegal.
Yep. Yep. It was.
And that's changed.
Yes.
Like it actually
Woo!
changed.
Celebration.
Yeah, so we've got a link to an article. It'll be down under where we talk about doors. But that spurred this idea. Why don't we talk about basically, a lot of people dual purpose their 4x4.
Mhm.
It's, they drive it to work
Daily
every
driver.
morning.
Yeah.
but on the weekends they're out wheeling, and that lends to sometimes poor choices for one or the other, right? Whether it's, I've lifted it too high or the suspension's too loose. Now when I'm driving it to work every day, it's questionably safe or questionably legal. So we just thought we'd touch on a whole bunch of different points, what you might want to keep in mind, and what might be legal or illegal, legal or illegal.
Yep.
And these vary state to state. So
yes, and we'll have links because there are some links where it gives you each state.
I tell you what, the one link
different
that we'll cover I found really useful. We'll talk about that when we get to it. So
okay.
First of all, I thought we'd go over, like, if you don't know, why do these laws exist? Some of them seem stupid. Like, why do people care how high my bumper is? It's my vehicle. Why can't I make it as tall as I want? And usually it comes down to either safety, or in the case of things like exhaust, it'll come down to emissions, or it'll come down to noise, right? If your vehicle is too loud, it could be considered a nuisance. That's against the law. It's just like that guy with the open piped Harley that keeps driving down your block at 2 a.m. and you shake your fist at them. Well, if your exhaust is too loud, you're the same guy. But really, if you look at this objectively, you could look at the cops as like the bad guys here, because you're just trying to have fun and the cops are raining on your parade. But you got to keep in mind that these laws are usually here to maybe not just keep you safe, but keep the people around you safe. So just keep that in mind. Take it all with a grain of salt. If you're breaking the law and the cop pulls you over, it's not the cop's fault.
No, he's just doing his job.
Right. You might think it's a stupid law.
Yeah, he didn't make the law.
We might agree with you.
You can
that it's stupid.
You can go and try to get the law changed.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point here, right? This law didn't change by itself. There have been Jeepers and now Bronco owners in PA that have been petitioning local governments to get this through for probably a decade and a half. We've been asking, we've been signing petitions, we've been knocking, maybe not physically knocking on doors, but we've been like banging down on representatives and whatnot to say, like, put this in front of people. The law is stupid.
Right.
And we always come down to the same example. You ever see a UPS truck driving down the street on a hot day?
Yeah.
His doors are open.
Yep.
No one's pulling him over.
Right.
But a Jeep or a Bronco now, they're not allowed to, even though their doors are removable. It's kind of ridiculous. So yeah, the law has now changed. Like I said, there is a link down below. But let's touch on each point. What do you think?
Yep. Let's go to, which was first? Lifts.
First one is lift.
Yeah, lift laws.
Right.
So I know when I went to lift my Jeep, people were like, you better check your lift laws. Because your bumper has to be a certain, in Maryland anyway, certain distance, and a lift would have changed that. But like there's, like in Iowa, for example, there's a law pending in Iowa that would lift the frame height from 23 inches and body lift height to 5 inches above the frame. So every state is going to have different laws, and some states may not even have any laws. But we will have a link. It's called liftlaws.com in the show notes if you want to check your state to see what it says.
This is the site that I was saying was so helpful. It's called Lift Laws, but if you go to it and click on your state, it is so much more than just the lift law.
Yeah.
It covers everything.
Yeah,
I mean, it covers
street legal laws for the state of Wyoming, the maximum size vehicle, how big your vehicle can be.
How wide can your vehicle be?
Right.
That's on here. Tires.
102 inches wide, yeah.
What's the allowed tread depth on your tires? That's on here. At least it is for Pennsylvania. I don't know if this is like this for everything.
Yeah, Wyoming has a bunch.
Oh, can you modify your tires? That's also mentioned here, right? It talks about tire grooving. You can't add grooves to make the treads any deeper because that cuts into the carcass, right?
Yes, see here, Wyoming has no maximum suspension lift in Wyoming, and it doesn't have a vehicle frame height limit.
Yep.
Bumpers are not covered. You can have whatever kind of bumper you want, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and some states have
bumpers.
Yeah, some states have fender and mud flaps. I know you said Pennsylvania, where your fenders have to go over the
Yep.
tires.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything about mud flaps for PA, but the fenders have to cover the tire, and the fender flare can be no more than 3 inches wide. Factory Jeeps don't fit that. And yet that's the law in Pennsylvania. So yeah. But it goes into like suspension. How can you modify the suspension? Like Pennsylvania has a law. You ever see those pickup trucks, especially leaf sprung ones, where they put blocks in between the leaf spring and the axle to give you more lift on a cheap
I've
kit?
never seen that. I've never paid attention. I've probably seen it. I just didn't realize
Right.
it.
Well, apparently in Pennsylvania, you're allowed to do that on the rear up to 5 inches, but you can't do it on the front. I don't know why you can't do it on the front, but you can't do it on the front. So they go that granular here for blocks in your suspension, which is kind of, I thought it was interesting to get that kind of granularity.
Right. So yeah, liftlaws.com.
Yep.
It's pretty helpful, especially if you're going to start modifying your Jeep, changing the stuff. I mean, if it's factory stuff, like you said, the Jeep fenders, I mean, like I highly doubt the police are going to
they
pull you over for that.
In fact, the way we used to get around it in the YJ days, or I should say the TJ days, I had a YJ, was TJ flares. You could get the Sahara or the Rubicon flares, which were from the factory wider. They were like 4.5 inches wide versus the 2.5 or whatever that the YJ came with. So you would take those flares and you would take off your YJ flares and you'd cut the body a little bit. You put the TJ flares on. Not only did you get more tire clearance, but the flare was wider. And if you went to get it inspected, or if you got pulled over and the cop's like, that flare looks too wide, you just go like, well, there's a Jeep dealership right up there. I can show you some right there on the lot that have them. And they couldn't really say anything because they never got granular enough to say, well, that didn't come with this Jeep. They could, right? They could have done that, but they didn't. So fun.
Yeah. And then we talked about doors. So pretty much now that Pennsylvania passed that law, everybody can drive without their doors. However, when you take your doors off, there are some things you need to be aware of, like your mirrors.
Right.
Because when you take the Jeep doors off, the mirrors go with it. So you don't have your side mirrors.
Yep. So yeah, you got to, and just about every off-road manufacturer in the world now, I feel like, makes body-mounted doors that you can, or body-mounted mirrors that you can put on your vehicle. And I've seen them on Broncos too. So now there is one exception to that, I think, and that is old vehicles. And I think this classifies for the Bronco as well as the Jeep. And I don't know what other vehicles had removable doors, but some of them you could buy from the factory with no mirrors. They only had the rearview mirror on the windshield. And I believe those are an exception. I don't know why you would want to drive a vehicle that has no mirrors.
It is the scariest thing ever. When I was in Maryland, yes,
I've done it plenty. I never went on the highway that way though.
Oh, I did. It was, it was scary. You can't see.
Yeah.
It's just I'll never ever do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. I always, even though it was never legal here in PA, if I ever had the doors off, I would make sure I had mirrors on. Because on the other hand, a lot of cops didn't really care if you had the doors off, but they did care if you didn't have the mirrors.
Right. Because it can be very dangerous because you could change lanes and you can't see what's behind you. Your what do you call it? Blind spot is even bigger.
Yeah. Well, you have to depend on turning your head to see.
Yeah.
And that can be unsafe in itself because then you're taking your eyes off the road. A quick glance into a blind spot when you have mirrors to check everything else isn't so bad. But when your blind spot is everywhere, everywhere that's not in your vision.
It was horrible. I hated it.
So, yeah. And like I said, I've done it, but I've never done it on a highway because I always felt like that was a little too much. But yeah. So there was one more thing I wanted to say about doors. I know the way they changed the law here in PA, this may also affect other states. I have no idea. But minors, kids under 13, I think it was, is how they called it out. Or maybe it was kids under 18. They still have to have a door.
So if your kids are in the back seat.
Yep. If you got a 4-door and the kids are in the back seat, you have to keep the back doors on.
Interesting.
but the front doors you can take off.
That's a good point.
And that's a safety thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
I guess imagine an infant in the back of your Jeep with no door, right? Like that's the worst case scenario. Infants don't understand what's going on and they try to do something stupid or just throw a toy out the side of the vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And it causes an accident, right? So I can understand why they would do it that way.
Oh,
because somebody out there would put their infant in the back of their Jeep with no door on, like, oh, it's legal.
That just gives my heart racing thinking
right?
of that. I'm like, oh no, don't do that, people.
Yeah.
Those poor kids. I never really liked driving with my doors off in town because everybody can see in. I mean, it's different when you're on the trails. I don't know. I just felt naked.
I liked it a lot when I was younger. Now I prefer a half door.
Uh-huh.
Like my YJ had half doors. I never had a full door for the YJ. And I still liked having the doors off, completely off. I just liked the breeze, and especially on a hot day, that thing didn't have any air conditioning though. That might have been the difference. But in the LJ, I was wheeling it with the doors off, and I had driven it with the doors off on really hot days because I only had full doors. But now that I got the half doors, they're on it all the time. I never take them off because I like having the mirror. I like having a place to rest my arm. You know, it's just, I like it. But again, that Jeep has air conditioning, so I'm kind of cheating.
So next on our list is lights. And I am not sure if that lift laws covers lights.
It does.
It does. Okay.
Well, at least, again, I don't know how it is for every state, but for the Pennsylvania listing, it covers headlights. It covers fog lights. It covers auxiliary lights. It even covers something called a passing light. I don't know what a passing light is, but they're on there.
And you got to be careful with those halos and rock lights underneath your vehicle, because some states you can't have certain color of lights.
Yeah.
And you can't drive with those rock lights on the interstate or in town.
In PA, for example, the halo rings are supposed to be orange and no other color. They can only be orange. You can't have red, you can't have purple, you can't have whatever, right?
That just messes with the color coordination of your Jeep. Jeez.
Or is it yellow? Whatever. The same color as the front marker lights,
right?
That amber color. That's the color the rings are supposed to be, because they're technically marker lights, and marker lights are supposed to be amber.
Yep.
Now, the programmable ones, of course, you can set to whatever you want. My wife's are blue at the moment. Nobody says a word, right? I don't think anyone's pulling you over for that stuff. But it is technically illegal. It's supposed to be that they're amber.
So it's whether you want to take the chance or not.
Yeah, and again, state by state, right? This could be different in every state, because the local law here is what matters. There's no federal law that dictates all this stuff. It's all state laws. The other thing to think about is how bright your lights are. That's not covered on the lift law site, at least not for PA. But if you look in the DOT code for your state, there will be call outs for how bright in lumens your lights are allowed to be. So a lot of off-road lights are too bright to be used on the highway in any circumstance, whether you're alone or not. They're illegal. They're supposed to be covered when you're not off-road.
Yeah, you're not even supposed to have them you're supposed to have a cover on them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're supposed to have them covered. I used to have some KC highlights, which were like ridiculous bright. And I would keep them covered on the highway, mainly because they had glass lenses and I didn't want them to break. But if I had them off, I would sometimes use them when there was nobody around. And one time I had them on and I was going down this country road, and it had to be a mile away. I saw someone coming the other way, and they're already flashing their lights at me. Because they were so freaking bright.
Right. So I never understood.
It wasn't a mile, but it was far. It was far away.
I never understood why you had to have them covered, even if you didn't have them turned on. But some places you have to have covers on them.
Yeah, it's so that you can't turn them on. Well, I mean, you could, but it would be covered, be blocked. And that's probably to stop those people who are like, oh, this guy won't turn his high beams off, so I'm going to show him.
Right.
And now you're both blind.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Because you don't think that far ahead when you're just trying to be like, damn it, turn off your high beams. I'll show you. And now that guy can't see, and you can't see because of his high beams. And before you know it, there's an accident. But those are all things to think about. with those LED light bars and stuff. Those things are
Mhm.
crazy bright, and they should be listed somewhere on the manufacturer's specification how many lumens they are, and you're going to want to line that up with what's legal in your state.
And to be honest with you, I very rarely use my off-road lights. If I'm at a campsite and it's at night, I'll turn them on.
I don't even have any.
Yeah, when my kids would play basketball at night and it was getting dark and they wanted to keep playing, I would turn them on.
Yep.
But for off-roading purposes,
yep. All you're
No.
really doing, if you're wheeling in a group, all you're really doing is blinding the guy in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's not all that helpful. Now, if you're
No.
out by yourself, if
Right.
you're overlanding, if you're in a small group, there's just like two of you or something, and you're the lead, then sure, use the lights. But for me, I see no reason. I have never been in a situation where crazy bright lights on the front of my Jeep are going to help anything, because I don't wheel at night generally.
Right.
I don't drive it on the street anymore. Right. I've used it for hunting a couple of times, but the headlights have always been fine for that. I haven't needed anything extra.
Yeah, I just have used it when I'm setting up my tent.
Yeah, that's probably a use case where it would be helpful, but you could use a lantern for that or something. If you
Right.
Didn't have those. So I'm not saying you shouldn't have lights. If people want lights, get them.
Yeah.
I just for the price, I'm like, what good are they doing me?
Exactly.
Like, how much are they really helping me?
Empty your pocket buying other stuff instead of lights. My opinion.
Like Dana 60s.
Yes, exactly.
And ox lockers.
Now exhaust and emissions kind of is the same thing. And again, every state is different. I know in Wyoming, we don't have emissions inspections. Colorado, they do. Maryland, you do. And each state has different requirements for the emissions. So, and I know a lot of people, when they modify their vehicles, like in California, a lot of those people are registering their vehicles in other states to get by these emission laws because they're, doing some sort of engine swap. And in California, it's just not working. So I know like they're registering their vehicles in Wyoming or South Dakota or Montana.
Did California ever pass those laws? They were talking about a law where you could not work on your own vehicle.
Oh.
Like it was illegal to not just modify, but do any work, service or anything to your own vehicle. I remember hearing about that a couple years ago. I don't know if it ever passed.
I don't know.
But I remember thinking how outraged I would be if I lived in California.
Yeah. Have to move.
Yeah, exactly. But registering your vehicle in a different state would solve it. I've heard of people that register their trailers in other states.
Or RV campers.
I forget what state it was. There's one of the New England states where it's a lifetime registration, I think it was, and it's every 5 years or something for inspections. Or are there no inspections? I don't remember anymore. Anyway, there was like this crazy good reason to be registering your trailer there. I registered mine in PA when I bought it just because I was already dealing with enough unknown stuff. I didn't want to go through the hassle of also figuring out how to register my trailer in a different state. So anyway, but yeah, you can do that kind of thing. However, the inspection is one thing. The road rules or road laws is a different one. Right. So if you're, for example, in Pennsylvania, you can ride without a helmet on a motorcycle.
Really?
But for a long time, and maybe this is still true, in New Jersey, you could not. So if you're out on your bike, even if it's registered in PA and you're a PA motorist, a PA licensed motorcycle license, if you crossed the line into New Jersey, you could be pulled over for not having your helmet on.
True.
So they'd be carrying around a helmet.
Yeah.
They'd carry around a helmet. As soon as they cross the line, they put the helmets on. Which seems totally ridiculous. Like, why? You have the helmet. You're
just put it on.
Why do you wear it?
Right. So what kind of exhaust emission laws would be like? You don't have to worry about it in Wyoming, but you would have to worry about it in Colorado. What do you? Probably noise type stuff.
Some states have very relaxed emission laws and others have very strict ones. That's one thing to think about for exhaust and emissions. Some have laws about whether you have to have a muffler or whether you can have a louder exhaust. Like I said, in PA, we have to have it has. I think the law says something like it has to be similar to stock or something like that, and it sounds kind of vague if you ask me. But um, and there is a law that says where the exhaust is allowed to exit the vehicle. So in PA, the exhaust has to exit behind the rear wheel and it has to exit outside of the body tub. I don't know if that's true for every state, but that's how it is here. So your tailpipe, you know how the tailpipe usually sticks out an inch or two past the rear of the Jeep?
Yeah, mine's been cut off.
Right. And a lot of times you'll catch rocks and stuff with that. A lot of us cut it off. That's technically not legal in PA because it exits underneath the body tub then. And the reason for that is because of the carbon monoxide,
Right.
whatever it is that comes out of your tailpipe. If it collects under the body of your Jeep because that is warm and it rises and it gets in through cracks and openings and you have your top on and the vehicle is sealed up, you could get carbon monoxide poisoning inside of your cab, right? So there's a reason for these things, as stupid as they sound. But that's things you got to think about. And I've seen a lot of people do those little exhaust ports on the side of the body where they go up and come out that way. I've seen some where they come out in front of the rear tire. Some states that's legal, some of them they're not. So these are just things you got to think about.
I was just reading Maryland. Vehicles are required to be equipped with mufflers. It is unlawful to install any kind of exhaust, cutout, or bypass. I'm assuming that would be during inspections.
Yeah, they would catch that in an inspection.
Yeah. So they're not like if you're from.
If you got like a complete prick of a cop pulled you over, he could theoretically check and cite you for it. But are they really going to do that? I don't know.
Right. So many things.
You have to think about.
Yeah. You have general inspection items, suspension brakes, parking brake.
Yeah, we kind of talked about suspension from a lift perspective. Brakes are obviously a safety thing. Your inspection mechanic is going to make sure that your brakes have at least enough pad on them to get you through the next year and things like that, your tires and all that. Those are the obvious things. But suspension, things like your sway bar and your panhard bars, your track bars, and even like other sort of control devices like trying to think of one like a traction bar and whatnot that are meant to eliminate axle wrap and whatever. If your vehicle came with those from the factory, technically they have to be present when you get it inspected. I had in the YJ, it was really common because the leaf springs are so rigid, they keep your axles pretty centered already, right? And a lot of folks took the track bars off because all they really did was make your suspension stiffer and make it flex less. So they would take the track bars off because the leaf springs did a good enough job of doing it for you. Every time I got my YJ inspected, my mechanic would be like, hey, you didn't get that track bar back on yet. And he would pass me anyway because he's a good guy. But he could have failed me for that, right? Because it was supposed to be there. It was there from the factory. And I don't know if you remember, I came on the Jeep Talk Show and talked about that. And Josh gave me a really hard time.
Oh, he did?
The track bars off.
I don't remember that, but
that was probably 5 years ago.
I mean, I remember Josh scolding people a lot.
Yeah.
That kind of vaguely rings a bell.
But so I'm not going to tell YJ owners they should take the track bars off, but I'm going to tell you that I did, and I never noticed a difference.
Interesting.
So maybe we'll get some comments
right
about how insanely unsafe I was. Now, on a modern Jeep suspension, you absolutely cannot. With a coil spring, it won't auto-locate the center for you. That's what the track bar is there for. And it will, your axle could walk out from under the vehicle without your track bar.
Wow.
So like, don't take it off on a TJ or newer. But CJs didn't even have them. Didn't come with them. They had a sway bar. They didn't have a track bar. So I feel pretty secure in my opinion that the YJ can survive without track bars.
Well, if you guys know of any other laws that we missed, please give us an email.
Or if there's some ridiculous law
Yeah,
in your state that you just
right.
hate, I want to hear about it because I've lived
Yes.
in PA. I've heard New Jersey and California in a lot of cases are worse than PA, but PA is pretty bad on the list.
Yeah, you can email us at offroadinsiders@gmail.com. You can find us on social media and message us, or just comment if on this video, or if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let us know stupid laws that you don't like or what we missed. Off-Road Insiders.
Yeah, yeah.
And now in the news.
Hold on, Videos has a comment here. In some
Oh.
states, you're required to have a front license plate at all times. Yes, that is true.
Mhm.
Your bumper choice and bracket choices are important. Yeah, so if you ever see people who have a winch on the front with the roller fair lead and they have those clip-on front license
Yep.
plates, that's because your state requires the front plate. Pennsylvania doesn't. New Jersey does. I don't know about other states. I was under the impression that most states required a front license plate, but I could be wrong about that. I haven't been to most states.
No, they don't. I'm trying to think. Which ones don't? Was Colorado I didn't need a front? I can't remember. I don't remember now.
Yeah, PA does not, and I'm happy about that.
I'm
A
trying
lot
to
of people put
figure.
vanity plates on the front, but
Yeah.
I
So I'm
happily have no front license plate.
I'm trying to figure out how to get back to the little screen where I can put up a picture. Because I have a picture for the news.
Yeah, should be under brand.
Brand.
The brand tab on the
Thank
side
you.
of screen
Okay.
right there. There you go. And
All
then
right.
your picture's already there. Look at that.
Yeah. So, bubble trouble in the news. Bubble trouble. That's a JL, by the way. And you got a little emoji for those who can't see where he's like,
Oh yeah. Well,
yikes.
you have to have the emoji
Yeah.
now. Otherwise, people
Emojis are
won't click.
important. Yes. And then the door hinges of the Jeep. So bubble trouble. Couple weeks ago, beginning of July, somebody wrote an article about bubble trouble. JL owners are furious because these brand new JLs around the door hinges, the paint is already starting to like bubble. And it's all about the aluminum. The issues concerning bubbling and flaking paint and corrosion most commonly seen in the door hinges and door panels of these Jeeps. And it's been a big topic on all the forums. It's especially the Jeep Gladiator and the JL. My Wrangler is rusting. It's not bubbling, but it is rusting just because it's an area that gets hit by rocks a lot. But
yeah, I mean, we talked about those Delrin door hinge liners
yes,
a couple episodes ago. This is a different thing, though. Those are aluminum inserts that are reacting to the steel of the door hinge.
Yes,
and they do the same thing. They bubble around the hinge, but not like this. In that picture,
no,
those bubbles are like coming out from where the hinge is attached to the door, right? So it's actually, folks who aren't watching us live, it's actually like bubbles coming out from around the door hinge on the door panel.
So Jason, I work with him at the shop. He's Bob and Mary's son. They have a red JL, and you can see it. It's really bad on there.
Oh.
And now another article came out that it's not just Stellantis that is having the problem, because Stellantis decided to go with the aluminum hood, tailgate, some doors, while the main chassis still relied on steel. And this corrosion is happening on the aluminum underneath the paint.
Yeah. The article you linked is from Autopian. Is that the name of this?
Auto.
I think it's Autopian.
Yeah, Autopian.
Autopian. I thought it was Auto Pain at first, but then no, it's the A and the I are backwards. Anyway, Stellantis' aluminum corrosion issues might go well beyond just Jeep.
So they thought eliminating these steel components would remove the risk of rust, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a risk of corrosion. And these are, some people say, oh, that's the same thing. And it's like, no, rust and corrosion are two different chemical reactions.
Similar, but well, Yeah. So I do wonder if, so to step back for a second here, right? With the advent of the JL, auto manufacturers in that time period and currently were on this big push to make vehicles lighter. And the Jeep was definitely a vehicle, the Wrangler that is, that they wanted to make lighter because they're trying to keep those fuel economy estimates down
Mm-hmm.
because all the government regulation that says you must meet these certain standards, right? So if you remember, there was a big hubbub around the Ford F-150. They went with an aluminum bed, I think, on the Ford F-150, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, that bed's going to fall apart as soon as I can throw some lumber or some rocks in the back. It's going to dent and ding the whole hell out of it." And I don't know if that turned out to be true or not, but that's what people were saying. But um, a whole bunch of manufacturers are doing aluminum panels now. Panels that need a lot of rigidity are sometimes still steel or they're thicker aluminum. But things like your doors, where it's just a skin, basically, right? Like there's a framework in there, and then the outer skin is all that you really see. The skin is all aluminum to make the door lighter. If you've ever picked up a JK door and then picked up a JL door, you'll
Mm-hmm.
notice there is a noticeable weight difference between the two of those. So anyway, aluminum is a whole different metal than steel, which means you got to paint it differently, you got to treat it differently, and maybe long term it needs different care. I don't know. I don't know if that's what's causing these
Well,
corrosion problems.
I read deeper into this article, and one of the primary ways that aluminum corrodes is when it comes in contact with a different type of metal. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently, the belief is that the hinges themselves are the problem because apparently, I don't know, I'll have to check when I go in the shop tomorrow. The hinges are still steel.
Oh, so that goes back to
Yes.
what I was just saying about how
Yeah.
parts that need the rigidity are still steel, and parts that they can get away with that lighter metal, they're using aluminum. So yeah, if the
Mhm.
steel hinge is bolted up to an aluminum door, and I guess if that paint underneath, because the paint should insulate the two,
Right.
and that's probably what they were counting on. So the paint
Right.
on the door and the paint on the inside of the hinge, if those two pieces, those two surfaces were painted, that should prevent corrosion. But the slightest little chip in that
Yes.
paint, or maybe even the bolts going through it, if the bolts are
Mhm.
steel, that could do the same thing.
Well, in the second article, they're saying they're starting to see it in other vehicles. Like there's a picture of this hood where the bubbling is just, and it's could be poor prep work at these factories. Because we find when we were powder coating, it is so key when you are prepping before you paint.
Hmm.
So key. And if you're not doing it right, you're gonna get rust and it's gonna start flaking.
Yeah,
I ha
paint. I mean, anybody who does auto body paint will tell you it's all about the prep.
there I
And
just
the bumper I put on the JK, the one that I built for the JK, after it was done, I had spent so much time building the thing that I wanted the project done, and I rushed the prep for paint. I didn't clean it as good as I could have, and I've had to take it off and repaint it
mhm,
twice now,
mhm.
and it's already chipping. The
Yeah,
second coat of paint that I put on the thing is already starting to chip. So I'm gonna have to pull the whole thing off and sandblast it or something because
yeah,
I just can't get the paint to stick right. So
right.
yes, when
Prep
it's bare,
prep
you
is
need to
key.
prep,
Yes.
and get the paint on just right. Otherwise, it's gonna cause you headaches later.
So I just posted the picture again of the hood where
Yeah, I
you can
see.
see all the bubbling.
It's crazy.
But apparently it's happening elsewhere. So anyway, that was bubble trouble in the news.
Yeah, I'm curious. I haven't looked at the fuel economy numbers on vehicles
Oh, the
before and
aluminum?
after the aluminum transition, right?
Right.
I wonder how much they really gained because the Wrangler still isn't great on fuel economy.
No,
It's like in the 20s, the low 20s.
oh, I'm at 13.
But I mean, the EPA estimate for the Wrangler JK was in the low 20s, and I
Uh-huh.
think the EPA estimate for the Wrangler JL is also in the low 20s. Did they gain like one
Right.
mile per gallon? Is that really worth the hassle and probably the expense? Aluminum's more expensive,
Yeah.
you know.
And well, for me, I'm lifted. I have bigger tires, so that's going to affect
Oh
my
yeah,
gas mileage. And I took my air dam off. So
I never expect good fuel economy out of any off-road vehicle because of all the modifications that we do to it that always impact fuel economy. But I mean a stock JK versus a stock JL. How big is the fuel economy difference? Or a stock F-150 the year before and the year after they changed to aluminum. Is it really that different? You know, the Wrangler I know is largely the same drivetrain otherwise, which would make it a pretty apples to apples comparison. I don't know about the Ford F-150 if they changed engines and stuff too. Anyway, if your paint's bubbling, go yell at Stellantis.
Yes. And I think they make that hard plastic. I think they make the door hinges for that. Do they or don't they? I don't remember.
Door hinges for what? Hard plastic?
Yeah, for the Jeeps. I know they do the hood latches. Maybe I'm confusing them with the hood latches.
No, the door hinges are still metal.
They're still metal. Okay.
Yeah, the hinges would still be.
And to replace them, because a guy came in because he could not get he had to take both the hinges off because he could not get the hinge. I can't think of the name of it now.
The liner?
The hinge liner. Thank you.
Yeah.
He couldn't get that out. So we, the Mopar price to replace one hinge. Each door has two. To replace one was $120.
Wow. I'm not surprised.
$120.
There's a reason I call them the Stealership.
Yes. However, you can find them for less money for a set on Amazon.
Yeah, you could probably get aftermarket ones too. They make different colored ones, or they did for the JK. I assume they have them for the JL too. But are they as good quality? That's
that's the other thing. Yep. So anyway.
So our other news article is basically the article about the door law in PA and the 7 other laws that were changed at the same time. So if you are really curious about how bridges get named in Pennsylvania, that's one of the laws. There's another one about licensee hiring flexibility. Really, really riveting stuff. So
there you go.
Yeah, the door law one, it's hold on. It is Senate Bill 298 allows drivers with certain vehicles to legally drive without doors. The vehicle is equipped with manufacturer-installed removable doors that can be taken off and reinstalled by the owner. It can now legally be driven in Pennsylvania without the doors.
Celebrate.
I mean, totally, right? There should be a party.
Yes.
A doorless party right now.
Exactly.
Anyway, that one came from MSN.
So next show, which we're still Nate and I will be figuring it out, because
totally well-planned show we have, folks.
Yeah, I will be. I won't be here for the next show, so we might push it. So just
we have to figure out if we're changing the date or not, and that's going to come down to Tammy's scheduling. So it may not be 2 weeks from now. It might be 1 week or 3 weeks, depending on where we decide to put it.
we like keeping you guys on your toes.
Yeah, right. You're just going to have to watch.
Yes.
Just go subscribe and watch us on socials, and then you'll know. Maybe you'll only know about 4 hours before we go live, like today, but we're going to try to do better with that.
And we're going to be talking about trail etiquette.
Yeah.
And Nate and I are going to try to come up with some things that people do on the trails that bug the crap out of us.
I've had a lot of cases, especially with the Jamboree, because we move slow because of the big group for the Jamboree, where there's that guy behind us honking the horn, yelling at us because we're so slow. I got some things I want to get off my chest to that guy.
Okay. So next episode. So make sure you subscribe so you can find out when that will be.
Yeah, you should do that. Maybe we'll just get Tammy to record from her old home in Maryland.
Yeah.
Or wherever you're staying in Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland. Yep. I'm gonna try to. I possibly might do that. I gotta
go visit the old garage.
I have to. Oh, it was a disaster the last time I went home. You couldn't even drive a vehicle in there. Well, Michael's Tesla was in there, and that was all that could fit. I could show everyone the Tesla. We could go live from the Tesla. I'm sure I could just use the Tesla's computer.
I have a friend who is very inactive on social, but just the other day he posted something. Apparently he has a Tesla now. I haven't talked to him in years, but he lives in the same town as me. And Tesla's, they got the cameras all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Are they recording all the time, or is there like a?
I don't know if they record, but they are
Somehow,
active all the
somehow
time.
he'd gotten a still capture from the cameras while he was driving, right? And in the still, there's this guy in an old Ford pickup truck giving him a big thumbs down as he drives past him. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. And I'm just kind of curious. People in, maybe it's not even this community. He wasn't like in a big, like an off-road rig or anything. He was just like in an old Ford pickup. Like, do people hate Tesla so much that they feel compelled to do that? Or was this just a random chance thing? I'd like to hear from other
I don't
people.
know. I think the vehicle's amazing. It saved Michael's life. Because it saw somebody turning into his lane that he never would have seen, because there's 9 cameras around that vehicle, and it swerved out of the way, and it saved Michael. And actually, I talked to Michael the other day, and he said, Mom, mark the calendar, in 2 years, they are going to be having people-less vehicles come pick you up and take you like wherever, because the new software upgrade that he just got, he's like, it's amazing what it can do. Yeah.
That is scary.
Times are changing.
I forget if I've talked about this on the show before or not, but I read an article, might be 6 months ago. Those driverless taxis that were going around in California. There was this group of people who decided that these were unsafe. And they kind of were. There's a whole bunch of cases where they had hit pedestrians and hit other cars and whatever. And they were trying to make a point as to what a nuisance these things were. And they figured out that if you put a road cone on their hood, just place it on the hood, it goes into like a panic mode and won't move.
Huh.
So what they were doing is they would just like wait until one was stopped at a traffic light, run out in front of it, put a cone on its hood and run away.
That's pretty funny.
So that's the world we're looking for if we're going to have driverless cars.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think I want to live in that world.
No. Nope. All right. So just stay tuned and we'll keep you posted on the next episode. And we're going to be talking about trail etiquette.
Yeah. So everybody, thanks for listening live. If you're here for the live show, if you're listening after the fact, thank you for doing that too. If you want to watch us live, you should subscribe to us on YouTube. We go live roughly every 2 weeks. We missed last time around because of something I had going on, but we try not to let that happen too often. So yeah, find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, Off-Road Insiders Podcast. I think we're just Off-Road Insiders on Instagram at Off-Road Insiders. Also go to offroadinsiders.com and you can find us on all the places that we do the things.
Mm-hmm.
And until next time, you can find me at swbcrawler.com. Where can folks find you?
At jeepmama.com. MOMMA.
All right, folks, everybody have a great one. And I do this every time. I got to find the button. Here it is. All right, guys, have a great one.
Have a great week.